The clinking of forks against porcelain was the only sound filling the room. For a family dinner that was supposed to celebrate togetherness, silence had become the main dish. I sat at the far end of the long oak table, the same one my late husband and I had saved for years to buy. It had once been the heart of our home, a place where birthdays, holidays, and milestones were shared. Now it felt like a stage, and I was the uninvited actor, sitting under the cold spotlight of judgment. My son Kevin sat across from me, his jaw tense, eyes darting from his plate to the woman sitting proudly at his side. Sarah, my daughter-in-law, was cutting her steak with unnecessary force, her lips curling into a smile that was anything but kind. Her eyes kept landing on me, sharp and deliberate, as if she was waiting for the right moment to strike. The children giggled quietly at the other end of the table, unaware of the storm brewing in the silence between adults. I tried to focus on them, on their innocence, on the way their laughter reminded me of when Kevin was small and carefree. But my chest tightened with every second, because I knew something was coming. Sarah had always been polite in public, her sweetness reserved for the neighbors, her friends, and anyone who would listen to her stories about what a perfect daughter-in-law she was. Behind closed doors, however, I had seen glimpses of something darker. A cutting remark here, a dismissive glance there. Over time, those glimpses sharpened into blades. Tonight, she was ready to use them. She set her knife and fork down with a deliberate clink, drawing everyone's attention. Then she looked straight at me, her voice slicing through the tense air. "You know," she began, her tone syrupy sweet, "this family has been carrying a burden for far too long." My hand froze halfway to my glass of water. I knew she wasn't talking about bills or responsibilities. She was talking about me. I looked around the table, hoping Kevin would stop her, but his eyes stayed fixed on his plate. He knew what was coming, and chose silence. My heart sank. Sarah leaned forward, her voice louder now, each word crisp and calculated. "You never contribute anything to this family. You sit here, taking up space, eating food that Kevin and I work hard to put on this table, but you give nothing back. You're a burden." The word hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Burden. A word I had feared in the deepest part of my soul, a word that could reduce decades of sacrifice, love, and devotion into something worthless. For a moment, the room spun. My chest tightened as though the walls were closing in. Kevin's children stopped laughing. The silence that followed her words was deafening. I swallowed hard, my throat dry, but I would not let her see me crumble. I sat up straighter, my hands trembling slightly against my lap. "Is that what you truly think of me?" I asked, my voice low, steady, and filled with pain I refused to hide. Sarah's smile widened, cruel and triumphant. "It's what we all think. You're just too blind to notice." Kevin's fork slipped from his hand, clattering onto the plate, but he said nothing. My son, the boy I had raised alone after his father passed, the man I had sacrificed every comfort for, could not find a single word to defend me. I felt something inside me break. It wasn't just anger, it was betrayal. A deep wound that cut through my very being. For years, I had watched over Kevin, helping him through school, paying for his college, even selling my jewelry to help him and Sarah with the down payment for their house. I had spent sleepless nights babysitting their children so they could work and build their careers. I had believed I was part of this family, a pillar they could rely on. Now, in front of the very table that had once been my sanctuary, I was reduced to nothing more than a burden. But pain has a way of transforming into something sharper. As my tears threatened to fall, I felt a fire ignite deep within me. If she wanted to brand me a burden, she would soon learn that I was far more than the fragile old woman she thought I was. I placed my napkin gently on the table and stood. My chair scraped against the wooden floor, the sound loud and jarring. The children looked at me with wide eyes, unsure of what was happening. I forced a small smile at them, but my gaze quickly shifted to Sarah. "You may think I am a burden," I said slowly, clearly, so that every syllable landed like a stone in water. "But you should be very careful about the words you choose. Words have a way of coming back, and regret is not something easily washed away." Her expression faltered for a split second before she regained her smug composure. "Are you threatening me?" "I don't need to threaten anyone," I replied, my voice calm but laced with steel. "The truth has its own way of revealing itself, and when it does, I promise you, regret will be the only thing you remember about this night." Kevin finally lifted his head, his face pale. "Mom, please, let's not make this worse." I turned to him, my heart aching. Worse, do you not hear what she just said to me? Do you not care? His silence was my answer. He had chosen his side, and it was not mine. I felt the weight of decades of love, sacrifice, and devotion pressing down on me, demanding release. I took a deep breath, and in that moment, I made a decision. This dinner would not be the night I was broken. It would be the night everything changed. I walked to the door, each step heavy but purposeful. Before leaving, I turned back to face them. The children's eyes darted between me and their parents, sensing the fracture in the family they had always known. You may think I am powerless, I said, locking eyes with Sarah, but you have no idea who you are underestimating. You will regret those words. Then, I left. The air outside was sharp and cold, biting against my skin. My heart raced, not just from pain but from something else. I would not let her words destroy me. I would find the truth, uncover the lies, and reclaim the dignity she tried to strip away. What Sarah did not know was that she had awakened a strength in me I had long forgotten, and that strength would soon unravel everything she thought she had secured. As I walked away from the house that had once been my home, I realized that the confrontation at the table was not the end of a chapter. It was the beginning of a storm that would reveal secrets, shatter trust, and change the very foundation of our family. And Sarah, with her smug smile and cutting words, had no idea she had just lit the match. I could not sleep that night. The words Sarah had spat at me clung to my skin like smoke, seeping into my lungs until every breath felt poisoned. Burden. I turned the word over in my mind again and again, searching for the cracks in my life that had allowed such a cruel label to stick. I had given them everything: my husband's pension, my savings, my time, my energy, my health, all poured into Kevin and his family so they could have what I never did. And still, she had the audacity to look me in the eye at my own table and call me useless. I sat by the window, staring into the darkness outside. The neighborhood bathed in quiet, but my thoughts were anything but still. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of something dangerous. Sarah's words had not just been cruel, they had been calculated. There was venom in her tone, but also a strange confidence, as though she knew something I did not. Why now? Why did she feel bold enough to humiliate me so publicly? The question gnawed at me. The next morning, I dressed carefully, pulling on the same cardigan I had worn for years, the one with small frays at the cuffs. I looked at my reflection in the mirror, and for a moment, I almost did not recognize myself. The woman staring back had lines of exhaustion etched across her face, but her eyes were sharper than they had been in years. I knew what I had to do. Kevin called later that morning, his voice tight and uneasy. "Mom, about last night," he began, his tone hesitant. "Sarah, she didn't mean it that way." I let the silence stretch long enough for him to feel it. "She meant every word, Kevin, and you know it." He sighed. "We were all tired. Things have been stressful. Stressful enough to reduce your own mother to a burden." My voice trembled with controlled anger. He said nothing. I drew in a deep breath, steadying myself. "Kevin, I want you to be honest with me. Has something been going on? Something you are not telling me?" His hesitation was all the answer I needed. Before he could weave a lie, I said, "I think I deserve the truth, after everything I have done for you." The silence that followed stretched so long I thought he had hung up. Finally, he muttered, "It's nothing, Mom, just money stuff. You wouldn't understand." Money. The word struck like lightning. My pulse quickened. "What money stuff?" I demanded, my tone sharper than I intended. "I have to go," he said quickly, and the line went dead. I stood frozen with the phone still in my hand. My son had always been a poor liar. His voice cracked, his words stumbled. Something was wrong, very wrong. The days that followed only deepened the mystery. I noticed Sarah avoiding me entirely, as though she feared what I might ask. She made sure to drop small remarks to the children, comments that seemed harmless but were laced with poison when I listened closely. "Grandma doesn't really help us, does she? We all have to work extra hard because some people just take **." She was planting seeds, twisting their innocent minds against me. But more troubling than her cruel words were the hushed conversations I overheard when I visited. Late at night, when I came to drop off a pie or check on the children, I would hear their voices through the half-open kitchen window. "Kevin, we can't keep this up," Sarah whispered one evening. "You think I don't know that?" Kevin hissed back. "But if Mom finds out, it's over. Everything." My breath caught in my throat. I pressed closer to the wall, straining to hear. She's already suspicious, Sarah muttered. Last night she looked at me like she knew. Then keep your mouth shut, Kevin snapped. One wrong word and the whole thing collapses. I stumbled back into the shadows, my heart racing. The pie trembled in my hands, nearly slipping from my grasp. I hurried home, questions clawing at me like wild animals. What were they hiding? What was Kevin so desperate to conceal that my knowledge could destroy them? The next morning, I made a decision. If they would not tell me the truth, I would find it myself. I went to the bank where Kevin and Sarah kept their accounts. The same bank I had once used to transfer money to help them with their mortgage. The teller, a young man with kind eyes, recognized me instantly. Mrs. Harris, he greeted warmly. How can I help you today? I was wondering if you could check something for me, I said carefully. It's about a joint account I used to have with my son Kevin. He typed swiftly, then frowned. That account was closed 6 months ago. My stomach dropped. Closed, yes, he confirmed, but they opened several new accounts afterward. Large withdrawals, frequent transfers, odd activity, if I may say. He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. Mrs. Harris, are you sure everything is all right? I forced a tight smile, my mind spinning. Yes, of course. Thank you for your help. I walked out of the bank, my knees trembling. Closed accounts, large withdrawals, odd activity. My son was hiding something dangerous. That night, I could not sit still. I turned on the small lamp by my bed and pulled out the old wooden box where I kept important paper deeds, receipts, bank statements. I sifted through years of records until I found the one I needed. The deed to my house. My hand shook as I unfolded the paper. My name was still there, bold and firm. But I could not shake the fear that Kevin and Sarah might already be scheming to take it. They had drained me before. Jewelry, savings, pension, was my home next. I clutched the paper to my chest, my breathing uneven. If they had already planned it, I would not go down quietly. The following day, I visited an old friend, Detective Laura Green, who had retired years ago but still carried the sharpness of her badge in her eyes. We had gone to church together for decades, and though she had stepped away from the force, she was never far from its orbit. Over tea at her kitchen table, I told her everything. The dinner, the cruel words, Kevin's evasive phone call, the bank teller's concerns, the whispered conversations in the dark. Laura listened intently, her fingers steepled beneath her chin. When I finished, she leaned forward. You're not imagining this, she said firmly. If what you overheard is true, Kevin and Sarah are involved in something serious. This isn't just about family squabbles. It sounds like fraud or worse. My throat tightened. Fraud, she nodded. Maybe gambling, maybe debts, maybe something bigger. But if they're moving large sums of money and keeping secrets, you need to protect yourself. Tears stung my eyes. He's my son, Lara, my only son. She reached across the table and gripped my hand. I know, but sometimes the people we love most can betray us in ways we never imagined. That doesn't mean you let them ruin you. Her words carved deep into my heart. That night, as I walked home from Laura's, I looked at the stars above me. Tiny diamonds scattered across the black sky. My husband used to tell me the stars were reminders of promises kept, of hope still alive. I clung to that thought. Kevin and Sarah thought they could break me, reduce me to nothing more than a burden, but I would not let them. I would uncover their secrets, piece by piece, and when the truth came to light, Sarah would regret every cruel word she had spoken. As I reached my front porch, I noticed something unusual. The mailbox was slightly ajar, though I was certain I had closed it earlier. My pulse quickened as I pulled out the stack of envelopes. Among the usual bills and flyers was a single folded piece of paper. No return address. My hands shook as I opened it. The note inside was written in rushed, uneven handwriting. You are in danger. Watch your back. Trust no one. My breath hitched, the paper fluttering in my hands. Someone knew, someone out there was watching, and this was only the beginning. Asterisk, the note sat on my kitchen table for hours, the uneven handwriting staring back at me like an open wound. You are in danger. Watch your back. Trust no one. I read it again and again, my pulse quickening each time. My hands trembled as I folded it carefully, slipping it into the wooden box with my deed and other important papers. Danger. The word echoed in my mind as I paced the room. Who had sent it? Why me? By morning, the fear had settled into determination. I could not ignore the warning. If Kevin and Sarah were hiding something dangerous, then I needed to confront them directly. I could no longer sit silently while suspicion gnawed at me. I called Kevin. His voice was thick with irritation. The moment he answered, "Mom, what is it now?" "I need to see you," I said firmly, "face to face tonight." He sighed heavily, and for a moment I thought he might refuse. Then, reluctantly, he agreed. "Fine. Come after dinner, but don't start with Sarah again. She doesn't want another scene." I hung up without replying. That evening, I dressed with care. I pulled on a simple dress and tied my hair back, the way I used to when I wanted my husband to take me seriously during our hardest arguments. I tucked the mysterious note into my purse. If Kevin tried to deny anything, I wanted proof that something was happening behind closed doors. The drive to their house felt longer than usual. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. When I finally arrived, the sight of the house nearly broke me. It was the home I had helped them secure with my sacrifices, the place I thought would always welcome me. Yet as I stood at the doorstep, my heart pounded like I was about to enter enemy territory. Sarah opened the door. Her smile was tight, her eyes colder than the autumn wind. "Well, look who decided to grace us with her presence. Didn't you have enough drama at dinner the other night?" I stepped inside without answering. Brushing past her, she scoffed but did not stop me. Kevin was in the living room, his head bent over a stack of papers. When he saw me, he quickly shoved them into a drawer, his expression shifting from surprise to annoyance. "Mom," he muttered, "you could have called first." "I did," I said sharply. "You agreed to this." Sarah crossed her arms, leaning against the doorway like a guard. "If this is another lecture about respect, save it. We have enough problems without your guilt trips." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "That is exactly what I want to talk about. Problems, secrets, lies. Kevin, what are you hiding from me?" Kevin's face darkened. "I don't know what you're talking about." I reached into my purse and placed the note on the coffee table. The words screamed back at us under the dim light. "Then explain this." His eyes widened for a fraction of a second before he masked it with anger. "Where did you get that?" "It was in my mailbox," I replied. "Someone thought I needed a warning. Now tell me, what are you mixed up in?" Sarah laughed, a sharp, mocking sound. "This is ridiculous. Some prank letter, and suddenly you think we are criminals. You really are paranoid." I turned to her, my patience unraveling. "Do not mock me, Sarah. I know about the closed accounts. I know about the withdrawals. I know you are hiding something, and I will not sit back and watch you drag this family into ruin." Kevin slammed his fist against the table, making me flinch. "Stop it, Mom. You do not understand." "Then make me understand," I shouted back, my voice shaking with both fear and fury. The room fell silent. The children stirred upstairs, their small footsteps echoing faintly. Sarah's eyes flicked nervously toward the ceiling before narrowing at me again. Kevin rubbed his face with both hands, his shoulders tense. "It is not what you think," he muttered. "Then what is it?" I pressed. "Because from where I stand, it looks like you are drowning in something dark, and you are letting her pull you under." Sarah's face twisted with rage. "Careful, old woman, you are treading on dangerous ground." Something in her tone sent a chill down my spine. She was not just angry, she was protecting something or someone. Before I could speak again, the sound of a knock startled us, sharp, urgent. Sarah stiffened, her face pulling. Kevin hurried to the door, glancing back at her as though silently asking for permission. She shook her head slightly, but he opened it anyway. Two men in dark jackets stepped inside. They carried themselves with the heavy presence of authority, their eyes scanning the room quickly before landing on me. One of them, a tall man with graying hair, held up a badge. "Mrs. Harris?" he asked. "Yes," I replied cautiously. "We need to speak with you privately. It concerns your son and daughter-in-law." Kevin jumped to his feet. "Wait a second. What is this about?" The other officer, younger and sharper, fixed him with a cold stare. "You will have your turn, Mr. Harris. Right now, we need your mother." My stomach dropped. "What is going on?" The older detective motioned toward the door. "Ma'am, it would be best if we stepped outside." I hesitated, my eyes darting to Kevin and Sarah. Kevin looked pale, his jaw tight. Sarah's face was unreadable, her lips pressed into a thin line. Something about her expression unsettled me more than the detective's presence. I followed them out into the cool night air. The older detective lowered his voice. "Mrs. Harris, we cannot go into full detail yet, but your son and his wife are under investigation. Financial crimes, potential fraud, and connections to people we have been tracking for months." My breath caught. "Fraud." He nodded grimly. "We need your cooperation. Anything unusual you have noticed, anything they have said or done, could be critical." My hands shook. I told them about the closed bank accounts, the large withdrawals, the conversations I had overheard, and the threatening note. They listened carefully, jotting down notes. "Thank you," the detective said finally. "We will be in touch. Please, for your own safety, do not confront them again until we advise you. This situation is volatile." As they left, my knees nearly buckled. I clung to the railing of the porch, the weight of their words crushing me. My son, my only child, was entangled in something criminal. When I stepped back inside, Kevin and Sarah were waiting, their eyes locked on me, and I knew they had seen everything. "What did they tell you?" Kevin demanded, his voice trembling with barely restrained anger. I held my ground, though my heart pounded wildly. "Enough to know you are in trouble, deep trouble." Sarah's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, her mask slipped. "You should have stayed quiet. Now you have made yourself a target." A chill swept over me. Her words were not just cruel, they were a threat. Kevin reached for her arm, but she shook him off, her glare fixed on me. I realized in that moment that the woman sitting in my living room was not just manipulative or cruel. She was dangerous, and if I was not careful, she could destroy me. As I left their house that night, Sarah's words echoed in my mind, sharp as knives. "You have made yourself a target." The danger was no longer hidden in whispers. It was standing right in front of me, daring me to fight back. And fight back I would. I never thought that my own home would feel like a battlefield. But that evening, as I sat at the head of my old wooden dining table, I realized it had become one. The same table where my late husband once told stories about his youth, where my children spilled their drinks and laughed until their bellies ached, where birthdays were celebrated with candles and songs, now felt like a stage for an unspoken war. My daughter-in-law had planted the seed the night she looked me in the eyes and said I was a burden. My son had stayed silent then, and I could no longer ignore the fracture between us. The dinner began in a silence that was louder than any shouting could have been. Plates clinked, forks scraped, but not a word was spoken. I watched the faces around the table. My son Michael looked tired, older than his years, his jaw clenched as though he was holding back words he did not dare to speak. His wife Anna kept her chin high, her posture stiff, her eyes moving between me and him, as though gauging which one of us she had more power over. I had been quiet long enough. I placed my fork down gently, the sound echoing in the stillness. "Anna," I began, my voice steady but low, "do you truly believe I am nothing more than a burden to this family?" Her eyes widened slightly, perhaps not expecting me to bring it up in front of everyone, but she recovered quickly. She set her napkin on the table with a deliberate calmness. "I only said what everyone else has been thinking. You live under this roof. You take up space, and what do you give back? You think your presence alone is enough, but it is not. Families need contribution, not just memories." The sting of her words was sharp, but I did not flinch. I turned my gaze to Michael. "And you, my son, do you think the same? Do you think your mother has outlived her worth?" His hand tightened around his glass. He would not meet my eyes. That silence told me everything I needed to know. The pain was worse than if he had shouted at me. I leaned back in my chair, my hands resting calmly on the arms, though inside my chest my heart pounded like a war drum. "I see," I said softly, though my voice carried across the table. "So the meals I cooked, the nights I stayed awake when you were sick, the years of sacrifice, the roof I kept over your head after your father passed, all of it was nothing. I am simply dead weight now." Anna smirked faintly. "You cannot live in the past forever. We are building our future. We need to focus on what is ahead, not what has already been done." I narrowed my eyes at her, feeling something inside me shift. For too long I had played the role of the quiet, obedient mother-in-law, swallowing the bitterness of her words. "Not anymore. The future you speak of is built on the foundation of the past. You enjoy this house, this table, even the chair you sit in, because I and my husband sacrificed for it. Without us, there would be no future for you to build." Her smirk faltered, but only for a second. "Still, that does not change the fact that you are not contributing now." The audacity of her confidence might have broken me months ago, but I had been pushed too far. I stood from my chair slowly, my hands gripping the table as I rose. The air in the room grew heavy. My grandchildren, sitting quietly at the far end of the table, looked at me with wide eyes. They could feel the storm brewing. "Do you know what it means to be a burden?" I asked, my voice rising. "A burden is someone who takes and takes without giving back. A burden is someone who poisons the very heart of a family for their own pride. Tell me, Anna, what have you given to this family except resentment and division?" Michael finally looked up then, his eyes wide with shock at my boldness. Anna's face turned pale. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I continued, my voice firm and unshaken. I may be older, I may not bring in money, but I have given my life, my love, and my strength to this family. That is more valuable than any paycheck or possession. You sit here and call me a burden, but let me tell you something, Anna. The true burden is the one who cannot see the value of love, history, and loyalty. And that, my dear, is you. The silence that followed was suffocating. No one moved. My words hung in the air like a sword. Anna's eyes darted to Michael, waiting for him to defend her, but he remained frozen. His silence was his betrayal, but it was also his judgment of her. She pushed her chair back suddenly, the legs screeching against the floor. You twist everything to make yourself the victim, she snapped, her voice trembling with anger. You want everyone to feel sorry for you, but I see through it. I will not let you control this family with your guilt. I did not move. I simply looked at her, calm and unbroken. I do not need to control anyone. The truth controls itself. And the truth is, one day, your children will look at you and wonder why you cast away the very woman who held the family together when you were too blind to see it. Her lips trembled, but she said nothing. She stormed out of the room, leaving behind the echoes of her footsteps. The children looked frightened, but I softened my voice as I turned to them. Go to your rooms, little ones. It is time for bed. They obeyed quickly, sensing the gravity of the moment. Now it was just me and Michael, sitting at opposite ends of the long table. I studied his face, waiting for him to speak. He finally did, his voice low and broken. Why did you have to do that, Mother? Why did you have to provoke her? I almost laughed at the absurdity. Provoke her? Michael, she has been provoking me since the day she married you. She called me a burden in my own home, and you said nothing. She insults me at your table, and you remain silent. And now, when I finally defend myself, you ask why I provoked her. Tell me, when did you lose your spine? His face flushed with shame, and he looked down at his plate. I pressed on, the anger inside me no longer restrained. I raised you to be a man of honor, a man who protects his family, who stands up for what is right. But here you are, letting your wife dismantle the very foundation of that family while you watch. Do you realize what you are allowing to happen? He rubbed his forehead, clearly overwhelmed. You do not understand. It is easier this way. Keeping the peace. I slammed my hand on the table, startling him. Peace built on silence is not peace, Michael. It is surrender, and I will not surrender to her cruelty. If you want me gone, say it now. Look me in the eye and tell me you no longer want your mother in your life, because I would rather face the truth than live in this false peace you cling to. His eyes filled with tears, but he could not speak. The silence was his answer. I nodded slowly, my heart breaking even as my resolve hardened. Very well, if that is the path you choose, then I will no longer stand in your way. But mark my words, son, one day you will regret allowing her poison to destroy what we once had. I turned and walked away from the table, leaving him sitting there, broken and speechless. For the first time in years, I felt a strange sense of freedom. It was painful, yes, but it was also liberating. I had spoken the truth, and whether they wanted to hear it or not, it was out in the open now. As I closed the door to my room that night, I realized something important. This was not the end of the battle. It was only the beginning. Anna had underestimated me, and Michael had disappointed me, but I was not done. I would show them both that I was not a burden. I was the backbone of this family, and I would prove it in ways they could never ignore. The war for respect had begun, and I was ready to fight. Respect had begun, and I was ready to fight. The next morning the air in the house felt different, heavy, tense, almost unbreathable. I could hear Anna moving about in the kitchen, her movements sharp and hurried. Pots banged, cabinet doors slammed, as if she wanted the entire neighborhood to know she was angry. My son's footsteps echoed down the hall, slower, dragging, the steps of a man carrying guilt he could not shake. I remained in my room, sitting on the edge of the bed with the morning light spilling across the floorboards. My hands rested in my lap, steady though my heart was far from calm. I had reached my limit the night before. I had drawn my line in the sand. But the question now was what they would do in response. When I finally walked into the kitchen, the smell of breakfast greeted me, but there was no warmth in it. Anna stood at the stove, her back rigid, her shoulders stiff. She did not look at me when I entered. Michael sat at the table with his coffee, his eyes fixed on the steaming cup as though it held answers he desperately needed. I took a chair across from him, and the silence stretched. Anna broke it first, her voice laced with venom. "So you are awake. I was beginning to wonder if you planned to sulk in your room all day after your little performance last night." I did not answer immediately. Instead, I studied her, the way her lips curled with contempt, the way her hands shook ever so slightly though she tried to appear composed. Finally, I spoke, my voice calm and level. "It was no performance. It was truth, something this family has been starved of for far too long." Michael shifted uncomfortably, but Anna spun around to face me, spatula in hand like a weapon. "Truth. Your truth, maybe, but the rest of us live in reality. We work, we pay bills, we make decisions. You sit in this house like a queen expecting gratitude for things you did decades ago. That is not truth. That is delusion." Her words sliced, but they did not destroy me. Instead, they strengthened my resolve. If caring for this family, keeping it together when it would have fallen apart, and giving my life to my children is delusion, then I will wear it proudly. But do not confuse your arrogance for reality, Anna. You are blinded by your own need for control. Michael finally raised his head, his voice strained. "Enough, both of you. We cannot keep doing this." I turned to him, my eyes sharp. "Then, take a stand, Michael. Tell us where you stand. Will you continue to let her dictate how this family treats me, or will you finally speak as my son?" His jaw tightened. He looked between us, torn, but his silence stretched until Anna scoffed. "He does not need to say anything. His silence says enough. He knows I am right." I rose from my chair slowly, pushing it back with measured calm. "No, Anna. His silence does not make you right. His silence makes him a coward who cannot stand up for the mother who raised him, nor for the wife he claims to love. He hides because he cannot bear the weight of the truth." Michael flinched as if struck. His coffee cup trembled in his hands. "Mother, please, stop." But I did not stop. I had swallowed my pain for too long. "Do you think I enjoy this, Michael? Do you think I enjoy fighting for the respect that should be given freely? No mother should ever have to sit at her own table and be told she is worthless. Yet, here I am, in the house your father built, being treated like an intruder. If you cannot find your voice now, then you will lose me forever." The room fell silent. Anna's eyes gleamed with triumph, as though my pain was her victory. Michael buried his face in his hands. I turned and walked out, my head held high, though inside my chest my heart felt like it was cracking open. Later that day, I decided I could not stay locked inside these walls where I was no longer wanted. I put on my coat and walked out into the crisp air. The neighborhood was quiet, the trees shedding their leaves, the wind carrying a chill that bit at my skin, but it was the kind of chill that made me feel alive. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe. I found myself at the old park a few blocks away, the one where I used to push Michael on the swings when he was a boy. The benches were worn, the paint chipped, but the memories clung to them like shadows. I sat down and let the memories wash over me. The sound of his laughter as he flew higher into the sky, the way he used to run to me with scraped knees, crying until I kissed them better. Where had that little boy gone? Where had the bond we once shared vanished to? A voice pulled me from my thoughts. "You look like a woman carrying the world on her shoulders." I turned to see Mrs. Henderson, an old neighbor, walking her dog. She was kind, always had been. I forced a smile. "Perhaps I am." She sat beside me, her dog curling at her feet. "I heard raised voices last night. I live 2 houses away. You know, sound carries. Is everything all right?" The shame of admitting the truth burned inside me, but I would not lie. "No, it is not. My daughter-in-law believes I am a burden, and my son, he lets her speak those words without protest." Mrs. Henderson's eyes softened with pity. "Children forget. They forget what their mothers gave up, what they endured. They think because they have their own families now, the past no longer matters. But it does. You matter. Do not let them convince you otherwise." Her words were like a balm on an open wound. I thanked her, but inside I knew pity would not be enough. I needed strength. I needed to decide how to reclaim my place, how to show Anna that I was not the fragile woman she thought I was. When I returned home later that evening, the tension in the house was thicker than ever. The children avoided me, sensing the undercurrent of conflict. Michael avoided my eyes. Anna wore a look of smug satisfaction, as though she had finally silenced me. But she was wrong. I entered the dining room and placed my hands on the back of my chair. "I have thought long and hard today," I announced, my voice carrying across the room, "and I have made a decision." Anna raised an eyebrow, her lips curling. "Oh, and what decision is that?" I looked directly at her, unflinching. If you see me as nothing more than a burden, then perhaps it is time I remove myself from your household. Perhaps it is time I show you what life looks like without me here. Michael's head snapped up, his eyes wide with fear. Mother, no, you cannot mean that. Anna's smirk deepened. If that is what you want, then maybe it is for the best. I ignored her and kept my eyes on my son. I do not want it, Michael. But sometimes what we want is not what is right. You have let her speak for you long enough. You have allowed her to turn your silence into betrayal. If I stay, this poison will only grow. If I leave, perhaps you will realize what you have lost. Tears welled in his eyes, but he did not speak. Anna leaned back in her chair, satisfied. I straightened my back, every ounce of dignity holding me up. Do not mistake my departure as weakness. I leave not because I am defeated, but because I refuse to live where I am not respected. You may call me a burden, but I know my worth, and one day, so will you. With that, I turned and walked toward my room. The weight of my decision pressing on my chest, but a strange sense of freedom rising in my soul. For the first time in years, I was choosing myself. That night, as I packed my things in silence, I knew this was not the end. It was only the turning point, the moment when everything would change. Anna thought she had won, but she had only lit the fire inside me. The battle was far from over, and soon she would regret every word she had ever spoken to me. The night I packed my suitcase was the first time in years I felt both broken and liberated. My clothes folded neatly into the worn leather case, each shirt and dress carrying memories of birthdays, holidays, and quiet evenings that no longer meant anything under this roof. As I zipped it shut, I felt a strange mixture of grief and resolve. I had given everything to this family, and still I was branded as a burden. Perhaps only my absence would teach them the truth. The next morning, the house stirred early. I could hear Anna's sharp voice from the hallway, issuing commands to the children about their school bags and shoes. Michael's footsteps moved sluggishly as though weighed down by chains of regret. I stood in my doorway, my suitcase at my side, and watched the chaos of the morning routine unfold. Not one of them noticed me at first, and I realized just how invisible I had already become in my own home. Finally, Anna's eyes fell on me. She froze, her lips curling into a smirk. So it is true. You are really leaving. I straightened my back and lifted the handle of my suitcase. Yes, Anna. If I am such a burden to you, then I will remove myself from your household. That way you will no longer have to carry the weight of me on your perfect little shoulders. Michael looked up sharply, his face pale. Mother, wait, you do not have to do this. I met his gaze and held it, my voice steady. No, Michael, I do. Because if I stay, your silence will continue to wound me more deeply than any words ever could. You chose to let her speak for you, to let her define my worth. I cannot live like this anymore. The children stood in the hallway, clutching their bags, their eyes wide with confusion. My granddaughter whispered, Grandma, are you going away? Her voice nearly broke me, but I bent down and placed my hand gently on her cheek. Only for a little while, my darling. But remember this. Never let anyone tell you that you are a burden. You are a gift. Anna rolled her eyes. Spare us the dramatics. If you want to leave, just go. We have things to do. If you want to leave, just go. We have things to do. Her cruelty no longer cut me. It only hardened my resolve. I stood tall, adjusted my coat, and wheeled my suitcase toward the door. Michael followed behind me, his words tumbling out in desperation. Mother, please, think about this. You have nowhere else to go. I stopped and turned to him, my eyes blazing. Do not underestimate me, Michael. I built a life long before you or Anna came into it. I can build one again. Do not think that because I am older, I am helpless. That is your mistake. He reached for my arm, but I pulled away. You had your chance to stand by me. You let it pass. Now you must live with the consequences. With that, I opened the front door and stepped outside. The morning air was crisp, the sun just beginning to rise, painting the sky with streaks of gold and pink. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with freedom. Behind me, Anna's voice carried, sharp and triumphant, good riddance. Michael's silence followed, and that silence hurt more than her cruelty. I walked down the steps, my suitcase rattling behind me, each step heavier than the last. Neighbors watched quietly from their porches, whispering to one another, but I kept my head high. I would not let them see me broken. I made my way to the bus stop at the end of the street, the suitcase wheels bumping against the cracks in the pavement. As I sat on the bench, waiting for the bus that would take me away from the house I had once called home. I felt a strange calmness settle over me. I was leaving behind pain, betrayal, and silence, but I was also leaving behind the woman they thought I was, the woman who could be pushed aside, silenced, and branded as a burden. The bus arrived, its doors creaking open, and I stepped inside. I took a seat by the window, watching the house grow smaller in the distance as the bus pulled away. For the first time in years, I had no idea where I was going, but I knew I could no longer stay where I was unwanted. I arrived at a small inn on the edge of town, a place I had visited once before with my late husband. The owner, Mrs. Walker, still remembered me. Her face lit up with recognition. "Well, if it isn't Margaret, it has been years. What brings you here with a suitcase in hand?" Her kindness nearly undid me, but I held myself together. "I need a place to stay for a while, just until I find my footing again." She led me to a small, cozy room with a single bed and a window overlooking the garden. The scent of lavender drifted in from outside. It was simple, but it was mine. I placed my suitcase on the bed and sat beside it, letting the reality sink in. I had left my family behind. I had walked out of the home I had built, the home where my memories lived, but I had also taken the first step toward reclaiming myself. Days passed, and I began to settle into the rhythm of my new life. I helped Mrs. Walker in the garden, cooked meals in the small kitchen, and found solace in the quiet. But at night, when the inn grew silent, the ache of loss crept in. I thought of my grandchildren, their small faces looking at me with confusion as I walked out the door. I thought of Michael, his silence crushing me more than any words could have. And yes, I thought of Anna, her smirk etched into my memory, her victory temporary but sharp. One evening, as I sat in the garden with a cup of tea, Mrs. Walker joined me. She studied my face carefully. "You look stronger than when you first arrived, but you also look like a woman carrying secrets." I smiled faintly. "Perhaps I am, but strength and sorrow often walk together, do they not?" She nodded. "That they do. But remember this, Margaret. Sometimes the only way to show people your worth is to leave them without it. Absence has a way of teaching lessons presence never could." Her words struck me deeply. She was right. My absence would speak louder than any argument. Anna would learn soon enough what it meant to live without me. A week later, I received a letter slipped under my door. The handwriting was messy, hurried, but unmistakably Michael's. I opened it with trembling hands. "Mother, I do not know where to begin. The house feels empty without you, though Anna refuses to admit it. The children ask for you every night. They cry when you are not there to tell them stories or tuck them in." I thought I was keeping peace by staying silent, but I see now that I was destroying it. I was weak. I let Anna's voice drown out my own, and in doing so, I hurt you more than I can bear. Please come home. I cannot face the children's tears, and I cannot live with the guilt of driving you away. I am begging you, Mother, come back. Tears blurred my vision as I finished reading. I folded the letter carefully and placed it on the table beside me. My heart ached with longing, but I knew the decision was not so simple. Michael's words were filled with regret, but regret alone did not erase the pain I had endured. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought of my next move. I had left to show them my worth, and already the cracks were showing. Anna might believe she had won, but the truth was clear. Without me, the family was unraveling. The next morning, I rose with a new determination. I would not return meekly, as though begging for acceptance. If I returned, it would be on my terms. Anna would have to face me, not as a victim, but as the woman who held the power to heal or to shatter what remained of their fragile household. I stood at the window, the sunlight pouring over me, and whispered to myself, "This is only the beginning. She will regret every word." The morning after Daniel's warning weighed heavy on me like a stone pressing against my chest. His words had not been careless. They had been deliberate, pointed, like a sword meant to pierce the last of my defenses. I had gone to bed feeling the ache of betrayal, and I woke with a fire in my chest that I could no longer suppress. There comes a point in every woman's life when silence is no longer a shield but a weapon used against her. I had allowed my daughter-in-law's cruel words to seep into the cracks of my heart, and I had watched my son stand in the shadows, offering no shield from me. That morning, I decided it was time to face them both. I stood in front of the mirror longer than I needed to, my reflection staring back at me, tired yet determined. My hair had streaks of silver, and my hands carried the map of every sacrifice I had ever made. Yet when I looked at myself, I realized there was still a strength in my eyes, one that neither of them could erase. I wore a simple dress, nothing extravagant, but it was the same shade of deep blue that my late husband always said made me look unshakable. Today, I would need that strength. When I walked into the kitchen, the house was quiet except for the low hum of the refrigerator. I began preparing breakfast, not as an act of submission but as a ritual of control. I laid out plates, scrambled eggs, and set a loaf of bread on the table. Every motion was deliberate. I wanted the house to feel normal before I shattered the silence with what needed to be said. Daniel and Claire entered together, speaking in low tones that ended abruptly when they saw me at the table. Claire's eyes carried their usual disdain, sharp and cutting, while Daniel looked restless, his fingers tapping against his thigh. I motioned for them to sit, my voice steady. "Breakfast is ready," I said, the words carrying more weight than they should. They hesitated, then sat across from me. The tension at the table was a living thing, thick enough to cut. I let it hang there for a moment before I broke it. "Claire," I began, my voice calm but firm, "last night, you told me I was a burden. Do you know how many years I carried the weight of this family without ever calling any of you a burden?" Her lips tightened, but I didn't let her interrupt. "I raised Daniel when we had nothing but pennies and prayers. I worked 2 jobs when his father fell ill, and I kept food on the table when the world wanted to crush us. And yet here I sit, being told that my existence is nothing but dead weight." Daniel shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting between us. Claire leaned forward, her tone dripping with practiced control. "No one denies what you've done in the past, but this is the present. We have our own lives, our own responsibilities. You cannot expect us to carry you forever." The audacity of her words hit me like a slap. "Carry me," I said, my voice rising. "Do you even know the truth of what I have carried? The sacrifices I made, the inheritance I safeguarded, the land that still bears my name. I have carried far more than you can imagine, and I have asked for nothing in return except respect." Daniel finally spoke, his tone defensive. "Mother, please, we don't need to keep bringing up the past. We need to move forward." I looked at him, my son, the boy I once held in my arms when fevers nearly took him, the young man whose college tuition I paid for with sleepless nights and endless work. "Forward," I repeated. "Forward cannot exist if the foundation is rotting. And do you know what rots a family, Daniel? Disrespect, betrayal, greed." Claire's eyes flickered at the word greed, and for a brief moment, I caught something in her expression that told me I was getting close to the truth. She recovered quickly, tilting her chin upward. "You are twisting this into something it is not. We only want what is fair." I leaned back, folding my arms. "Fair?" I asked. "Fair would mean acknowledging the hands that built this family. Fair would mean admitting that everything you and Daniel enjoy today was built on the back of my sacrifices. But instead, you call me a burden." The room went silent except for the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. My words had struck, but I knew words alone would not dismantle the wall Claire had built between us. I needed proof, something undeniable that would strip the mask from her face. That was when I decided to reveal what I had kept hidden. "I have documents," I said, my voice steady. "Proof of every asset, every deed, every account that still ties this family together. They are all in my possession, and they tell a story you may not want to hear. A story of betrayal, of secrets hidden in plain sight." Daniel frowned, confusion crossing his features. Claire's composure wavered for the first time, a flicker of panic in her eyes. "What documents?" she asked, her tone sharper than before. "The kind that reveal intentions," I replied, never breaking eye contact. "The kind that expose who truly values this family and who only values what they can take from it." Daniel looked at Claire, searching her face for answers, but she avoided his gaze. That avoidance told me everything I needed to know. I stood, pushing my chair back with deliberate force. "You think I am powerless because of my age, because I no longer hold a paycheck in my hand. But you forget that I still hold the truth, and truth, once revealed, is more powerful than anything you can imagine." Claire stood as well, her hands gripping the edge of the table. "You wouldn't dare," she spat. I looked at her calmly. "Try me." The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel looked torn, caught between loyalty to his wife and the gnawing fear that I might indeed be holding something far larger than he could comprehend. I could see the storm gathering in his mind, but I knew he wasn't ready to face it yet. The breakfast remained untouched as I walked out of the room, leaving them in the wreckage of my words. For the first time in weeks, I felt the weight on my shoulders begin to lift. The fight was far from over, but I had drawn the battle lines. Claire had revealed her cracks, Daniel had shown his weakness, and I still had my strength. When I closed the door behind me, I whispered to myself, this family will not fall apart on her terms, it will rise on mine. That morning marked the beginning of a new war, one where silence would no longer be my weapon. The storm had gathered, and I was ready to walk into it unflinching. The day had a strange, heavy stillness that pressed against the windows, the air thick with tension. I had spent the morning going through the stack of papers I had kept hidden. The deeds, statements, and letters that revealed truths Claire had tried so desperately to bury. Each page told a story of manipulation, secrecy, and greed. I had never imagined that a family I loved so deeply could be driven by such self-interest. By noon, I knew I could no longer wait. I had to confront Claire directly, and this time, I would not allow her to twist my words, manipulate my feelings, or play the victim. I gathered the documents, arranged them in a neat folder, and prepared myself for the confrontation. I wanted clarity, and more importantly, I wanted accountability. I walked into the living room where Daniel was reading a newspaper. He looked up at me, eyes wary but curious. "Mom, what are you doing?" he asked, his voice tight. "I am setting the record straight," I said, my tone firm. "I will not allow this family to be torn apart by lies and deception any longer. Claire needs to answer for what she has done." Daniel's face fell. "Mom, are you sure you want to do this? You don't know how far she will go." I gave him a steady look. "I know exactly how far she will go, and I know exactly what I have to show her. You will not protect her from this. Today, she sees the truth." I moved toward the kitchen, my folder clutched tightly in my hands. Claire was there, meticulously arranging fruit on a platter, her movements precise, controlled, but there was a tension in her shoulders I had never seen before. She looked up, a smile that did not reach her eyes spreading across her face. "Maggie, what a surprise," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "What brings you into the kitchen?" I placed the folder on the table with a deliberate thud, the sound cutting through the room like a warning. "Sit down, Claire," I said, my voice low, commanding. "We need to have a conversation." Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second, and I saw the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. She tried to regain her composure, brushing imaginary crumbs off her dress. "Of course, Maggie, what is this about?" I opened the folder and spread the documents across the table. Deeds, financial statements, letters of evidence that told a story far beyond the kitchen walls. Claire leaned in, her eyes scanning the papers quickly, her composure slipping. "These are records," I said. "Records that show your manipulation, your attempts to control this family, and your efforts to turn Daniel against me. You thought I wouldn't notice, but I have always noticed. You underestimated me, Claire, and now you will face the truth." Claire's hands trembled slightly as she reached for a paper. "These are lies," she said, her voice rising. "You are twisting everything." I leaned forward, my eyes locking with hers. "Twisting? No, Claire. These are facts. Every letter, every bank statement, every attempt to manipulate Daniel and isolate my all documented. You are not the only one who can plan and execute. You have underestimated a mother's memory and a mother's vigilance. These papers are proof of what you have been trying to hide for years." Daniel shifted in his seat, looking between us, conflicted. "Claire, I didn't know it was this bad," he said softly, his voice uncertain. She looked at him, her expression hardening, a flash of desperation in her eyes. "Daniel, don't listen to her. She is exaggerating, twisting the story to make me look guilty." I didn't flinch. "Exaggerating? Let's go through this carefully, shall we? First, the account statements. These show the money you siphoned from the family accounts under the guise of household expenses. You never recorded them properly. Every withdrawal, every transfer, is documented. The bills you claimed were necessary were routed to accounts you controlled. Every single transaction leads back to you." Her hands clenched into fists, nails digging into her palms. Her lips quivered, but she said nothing. The silence in the room was charged with energy, a quiet storm before the full tempest. "And then there are the letters," I continued, pulling out a stack of correspondence Claire had sent me over the years, each written with a polite, caring tone on the surface, but hiding manipulative intent. These letters show attempts to alienate me from Daniel, convincing him that I was unreasonable, that I was controlling, that my care for this family was a burden rather than a gift. Her eyes flicked to Daniel, and I saw the briefest moment of guilt cross his face. "Mom, I didn't know," he began. "Daniel, stay out of this for now," I said, my voice firm but gentle. This is between Claire and me. You will have your chance to face the truth. But right now, she needs to understand that her actions have consequences. Claire's composure broke. She slammed her hand onto the table. You don't understand. Everything I did to protect this family. I thought I was helping, and now you are trying to ruin me. I leaned closer, my voice calm but deadly serious. Protecting the family, Claire, protecting a family does not involve deception, manipulation, and betrayal. Protecting a family does not involve turning a husband against his mother and attempting to control every financial move for personal gain. You are not protecting this family. You have been controlling it for your own benefit. Tears formed in the corners of her eyes, a mix of fear, anger, and frustration. You don't know what it was like. I was trying to keep the family together. Daniel wouldn't listen. He wouldn't care unless I guided him. I shook my head slowly. Guidance does not involve lying, forging signatures, or threatening the very people who raised you. I gave you trust, Claire. I gave you the benefit of the doubt, and you repaid it with treachery. Daniel's hands shook slightly. Mom, please, I know you're angry, but do you really think she did all of this intentionally? I looked at my son, my heart heavy but my voice unwavering. Daniel, she knew exactly what she was doing. Intentional or not, the results are the same. I was isolated, manipulated, and lied to for years. And now, you must understand the weight of those actions. You are both accountable for the damage that has been done. Claire's face contorted in rage. You're exaggerating. You are turning this into a crusade against me. You are insane. I picked up one of the letters, sliding it across the table. Read this. Read it carefully, Claire. This letter encouraged Daniel to question every decision I made. It praised his independence while undermining my role as his mother. This is not exaggeration. This is fact. You orchestrated doubt to gain control, and now it's time to own it. Her hands shook as she reached for the letter, but I pulled it back, my fingers tight around it. You will not pick and choose what you acknowledge. You will see the whole picture. You will accept the responsibility for what you have done, or you will face consequences that go far beyond the walls of this house. She took a step back, her eyes wide, her mouth slightly open. Consequences? What are you threatening me with? I held her gaze steadily. The law, Claire. Public exposure, proof of manipulation, financial misconduct, and attempted coercion. You have left me no choice but to ensure that your actions are documented and confronted. I am not asking. I am telling you. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, looking between us with panic in his eyes. Mom, please, think about what you are saying. Claire is my wife. This could destroy our lives. Claire is my wife. This could destroy our lives. I turned to him, my expression softening slightly, but my voice firm. Daniel, think about what she has already done. She has already tried to destroy the foundation of this family. You will not be collateral damage to her ambitions. You must stand with the truth, even if it is uncomfortable, even if it challenges everything you thought you knew. Claire laughed bitterly, a sound that carried no joy. You are insane. You think these papers and threats will scare me. You are just an old woman clinging to power you no longer have. I leaned forward, calm, composed, the storm within me steady. Power, Claire, this is not about power. This is about truth. This is about exposing what has been done in secret. I am not afraid of you or your manipulation. I am afraid of nothing because I know what I have done. I know the sacrifices I made, the life I built, the love I gave. You cannot take that from me. Her shoulders slumped slightly, a moment of defeat in the chaos of her rage. She realized, finally, that I had seen through her lies, that I had prepared for this confrontation, and that I was not backing down. Daniel looked at me, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe. Mom, I didn't know you had all of this. I didn't know you were keeping track. I gave him a small, sad smile. I did not keep track for revenge. I kept track because I always suspected that betrayal might come. I wanted to protect this family, Daniel, even if you could not see it at the time. Claire glared at me, the fire in her eyes now tempered by the reality of the moment. She understood that the truth had shifted the balance, that she could no longer control the narrative. The confrontation had ended in my favor, but I knew this was only the beginning. Her reaction had revealed fear, and fear can be a powerful motivator, or a dangerous weapon. I stood up, gathering the documents once more. Claire, this is your chance. Admit what you have done, face the consequences, and perhaps some measure of trust can be restored in the future. Refuse, and you will face the full exposure of your actions, both legally and within this family. Her hands trembled, her lips pressed together. Daniel looked at her pleadingly, but the decision rested with her. I watched, silent and resolute, as she made her choice. Finally, she spoke, her voice small, uncertain, almost defeated. Fine, you win. I admit it. I manipulated. I lied. I held up a hand. Do not try to soften it. Say exactly what you did. Every lie, every manipulation, every attempt to control. This is the only way forward. And as she began to speak, the room filled with the truth I had been waiting for. A truth that would change everything and set the stage for the reckoning that was coming. The house felt suffocating after the confrontation with Claire. The sunlight streaming through the windows could not lift the heaviness that had settled in the air. I moved slowly through the living room, my hands still gripping the folder with the damning evidence. Daniel followed me quietly, the weight of what had happened pressing on him in a way I had never seen before. I can't believe it, he whispered, his voice tight. All these years, I had no idea. You weren't supposed to know, I said quietly, my eyes fixed on the floor. Claire was careful. She made sure nothing ever seemed out of place. That was her strategy, make everyone doubt themselves while she orchestrated everything in secret. That's why this is so important. We have to make sure the truth comes out completely. He nodded slowly, though the disbelief lingered in his eyes. What do we do now, Mom? I feel like my whole life has been a lie. You start by understanding the full extent of what happened, I said firmly. Then you stand with the truth. We can no longer allow manipulation and deceit to run this family. The reckoning begins now. I called the lawyer I had retained months ago, the one I had reached out to when I first suspected something was amiss. By the time Claire returned to the house, he was already on his way. The plan was clear. We would confront her legally, financially, and morally. She would have no room to maneuver, no ability to twist the facts. Every word she had spoken, every action she had taken would be documented and addressed. Claire walked in with her usual forced confidence, but something was different this time. The air around her was tense, the mask of control slipping ever so slightly. She glanced at the folder on the table, and her eyes flicked to the lawyer, a hint of fear creeping into her expression. Maggie, what are you doing now? She asked, her voice controlled but strained. We are finishing this, Claire, I said, my tone calm but unyielding. You've had your chance to manipulate and lie. Now it ends. We are going to go through everything. You will answer for your actions. No more secrets. No more deception. Her smile faltered, a flicker of panic in her eyes. This is ridiculous. You think these papers mean anything? I have managed this family for years, and now you want to ruin everything. You have managed this family by controlling and manipulating us, I said firmly. You have taken advantage of trust, distorted reality, and isolated me from my son. That is not management. That is betrayal, and it will not be tolerated any longer. The lawyer entered the room, carrying a stack of legal forms and a notebook. Claire, he began, his voice professional but unyielding. We have reviewed the evidence Ms. Sullivan has provided. It is comprehensive, clear, and irrefutable. The next steps are for you to provide a full account of your actions and to begin restitution immediately. Claire's face went pale. Restitution? You can't. This is insane. You don't understand what you are asking. I understand perfectly, I said, my voice steady. I am asking you to acknowledge your actions, to correct the harm you have done, and to make amends. That is the only way this family can move forward. Daniel stepped closer to Claire, his eyes wide with anger and betrayal. I trusted you, Claire. I believed in you. You were my partner, my wife, and you turned everything against us. Against my mother, against me. How could you do this? Claire's hands trembled as she reached for her purse, then paused, her composure slipping. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I thought I was protecting the family. I thought I was helping. You were helping yourself, I said sharply, protecting your interests, manipulating my son, isolating me, and attempting to control every aspect of our family's life. That is not helping. That is theft, coercion, and deception. You have to face what you have done. Her eyes welled up with tears, and for a moment, I wondered if she would break entirely. But there was a coldness there, a survival instinct that had allowed her to manipulate and control for years. She had not anticipated a mother who would fight back, who would expose the truth. That realization was evident in her gaze, and it fueled my resolve. The lawyer laid out the legal documents, each one detailing the steps Claire would have to take to make restitution, to formally admit to the financial and emotional manipulation, and to provide a detailed account of every action she had taken to harm the family. She scanned the documents quickly, her fingers shaking, but she knew resistance was futile. The evidence was overwhelming, and the truth was undeniable. "This isn't over," she whispered, a shiver in her voice. "I can fight this." "You will not fight the truth," I said calmly. "You will face it, you will own it, and you will make amends. This is the only way you can begin to repair the damage you have done, and the only way this family can survive." Daniel looked at me, his expression conflicted. "Mom, are we really doing this? Confronting her like this?" "Yes, Daniel," I said firmly. "Confronting her is the only way forward. We cannot allow fear, manipulation, and lies to dictate our lives. We have to reclaim our family, and we have to do it with the truth as our weapon." Claire's voice rose, a mixture of fear and defiance. "You think you are so clever, Maggie. You think you can destroy me, expose me, and everyone will believe you. But this family will never forgive you for humiliating me. You will be the villain." I met her gaze steadily, unwavering. "I do not care about being the villain. I care about being the mother, the grandmother, the protector of this family. Your actions have consequences, Claire, and it is time for you to face them." The confrontation stretched for hours. Claire attempted to justify every action, every manipulation, every lie, but the evidence was relentless. I presented each document, each letter, each transaction with clarity and precision. Every excuse she offered was dismantled by the facts. Every attempt to shift blame was met with undeniable proof of her guilt. By late afternoon, she sat quietly, defeated. Her eyes were red, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The room was heavy with the tension of years of lies finally unraveling. Daniel exhaled deeply, relief and exhaustion mingling in his expression. "It's over, Mom. She's done. Finally, it's over." I nodded, though my heart remained heavy. "It's not over until the restitution is complete, until accountability is enforced. But yes, the first step has been taken. The truth is out, and there is no turning back." The lawyer gathered the signed documents, confirming that Claire had formally acknowledged her actions and agreed to begin restitution immediately. Legal steps had been taken, and there was now a clear path to protect the family and reclaim what had been lost. Daniel came to me, wrapping his arms around me tightly. "Mom, I don't know what I would have done without you. I feel like my whole life has been rewritten. Done without you. I feel like my whole life has been rewritten." "You have a choice now, Daniel," I said softly. "You can choose to rebuild, to understand what happened, and to stand with the truth. That is the power of honesty, accountability, and courage. That is the path forward for us." Claire sat in silence, her expression a mixture of shame, anger, and disbelief. I realized she had underestimated the power of a mother's resolve, the weight of evidence, and the determination to protect her family at all costs. She had been forced to confront the full scope of her actions, and there was no escape. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the living room, I felt a strange sense of calm. The confrontation had been intense, emotional, and exhausting, but it had been necessary. For the first time in years, the house felt lighter, freer. The weight of manipulation, lies, and deceit had been lifted, replaced with the potential for healing, restoration, and accountability. Claire finally spoke, her voice small and broken. "I never realized how much I had done. I thought I was protecting, but I see now. I see the damage." "Yes," I said firmly. "See it clearly, understand it fully, and then act to make it right. That is all I ask." Daniel nodded, the tension in his shoulders easing. "Mom, we can move forward now, together, with truth guiding us." I looked at him, my heart swelling with a mixture of relief, sadness, and hope. "Yes, Daniel, together, with truth guiding us. That is the only way we heal, and the only way we protect the family we still have left." The evening shadows deepened, and the house, once heavy with lies, felt lighter. Claire would face the consequences, restitution would begin, and the family could finally begin the slow, painful, but necessary process of recovery. The reckoning had come, and it had brought with it a promise of accountability, justice, and the potential for a new beginning. I sat down, letting out a long, measured breath. The confrontation was over. The family could begin to rebuild, and I knew, deep in my heart, that the worst was behind us. The morning sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting a golden hue across the living room. The air felt different, lighter, as if the house itself was breathing a sigh of relief. I had spent the night in reflection, considering everything that had happened over the past weeks, the confrontations, the lies exposed, the truths revealed, and the shattered trust that needed rebuilding. Daniel was in the kitchen preparing breakfast. The sound of sizzling eggs and the aroma of fresh coffee created a sense of normalcy I had not felt in years. He turned to me with a cautious smile. "Mom, it's quiet this morning. Feels different, doesn't it?" "Yes," I said, my voice calm but tinged with emotion. "It feels like the storm has passed, though we have a lot of work ahead. Rebuilding trust, restoring relationships, and reclaiming what was lost will take time. But today, we can finally breathe without fear." The front doorbell rang, and I felt a twinge of apprehension. After all the chaos with Claire and the legal proceedings, every unexpected knock brought a moment of hesitation. Daniel opened the door, and I was surprised to see my eldest daughter, Emily, standing there with a bright smile. Her presence was a reminder that not all had been lost, that family could still come together. "Mom, Daniel," she said, stepping inside, enveloping us both in a warm hug. "I heard everything that happened. I wanted to be here. I wanted to support you." I held her close, feeling the warmth and love that had been absent in recent months. "Emily, it means so much to have you here. We have a long road ahead, but together, we can make this house a home again." She nodded, glancing around the living room. "I know it's been difficult, but you've shown incredible strength. I can see it in Daniel too. Mom, you've saved this family from something far worse." Daniel smiled softly. "We're learning what real family means, Emily. It's not about blood or appearances. It's about honesty, respect, and standing together when it matters most." The sound of a car pulling into the driveway caught my attention. I looked out the window to see a familiar face, Mrs. Henderson, the neighbor who had been quietly observing the chaos from the sidelines. She was holding a basket filled with baked goods, and a gentle smile that conveyed empathy and understanding. I opened the door, welcoming her in. "Mrs. Henderson, it's so good to see you. Thank you for coming." She set the basket on the counter and looked at me warmly. "Maggie, I can't imagine what you've been through, but I want you to know that your courage has inspired everyone around you. You stood up, you fought back, and you protected your family. That takes strength that most people can only hope to have." I felt a lump in my throat. "Thank you. It hasn't been easy, but I couldn't stand by any longer. I had to act, not just for myself, but for Daniel, for Emily, and for the family we still have left." We settled into the kitchen, the air filled with the comforting smells of breakfast and the warmth of human connection. Conversation flowed naturally, laughter mingling with stories of past family gatherings. For the first time in months, the house felt alive, free from the tension and fear that had dominated our lives. Later that afternoon, I received a phone call from the lawyer overseeing Claire's restitution. He explained that the process was moving swiftly. Claire had signed the legal agreements acknowledging her actions, and the funds would begin to be returned immediately. The relief that washed over me was profound. Justice had been served, and the first steps toward healing were underway. Daniel and I discussed how we would handle the ongoing emotional recovery. Therapy sessions were arranged, both individually and as a family, to help us process the trauma, rebuild trust, and strengthen our relationships. It was clear that financial restitution alone could not heal the wounds left by deception, betrayal, and manipulation. We needed to confront the emotional scars head-on. Emily suggested a family meeting, inviting everyone who had been affected, including close friends and neighbors who had witnessed the chaos and offered support. The idea resonated with me. It was time to bring everything into the open, to acknowledge the past, and to embrace a future built on transparency and trust. We gathered in the living room that evening. The room was warm, softly lit, and filled with people who cared about us. I looked around at the faces: Daniel, Emily, close friends, neighbors, and even some extended family members. Each person represented a pillar of support, a reminder that we were not alone. I stood before them, my hands steady, my heart open. "Thank you all for being here," I began. "The past weeks have been some of the most difficult of my life. We have faced betrayal, deception, and challenges that I never thought we would endure. But through it all, one thing has become clear. Family is not just about who shares your blood. Family is about love, respect, and standing together, even in the hardest moments." Daniel stepped forward, his voice strong and unwavering. "We have learned the importance of truth, accountability, and courage. Mom has shown us that standing up for what is right, even when it is difficult, is the only way to protect those we love. We will rebuild, and we will do it together." Tears filled my eyes as I felt the weight of their words. The room was filled with understanding, empathy, and commitment to a shared future. We spent the evening talking openly, sharing our feelings, and reaffirming our bonds. The fear and tension that had dominated our lives were slowly replaced with hope and determination. The next morning, I received a call from the social worker assigned to assist with Claire's restitution. She explained that the victims would receive regular updates and that the financial compensation would be distributed fairly. Knowing that the victims of Claire's actions would finally see justice was a profound relief. It reminded me that our actions not only protected our family but also restored dignity to those who had suffered. I reflected on the journey we had taken from the shock of discovering Claire's deceit to the careful legal and emotional confrontation to the slow but steady rebuilding of trust. Each step had required courage, patience, and unwavering commitment to truth. I realized that the experience, though painful, had transformed us. We were stronger, wiser, and more connected than ever before. Daniel joined me in the living room, carrying a cup of tea. He sat down beside me, his eyes thoughtful. "Mom, do you ever think about how close we came to losing everything? How Claire almost tore us apart completely?" "Yes," I said softly. "I think about it often, but I also think about the strength we found, the courage we discovered, and the love that carried us through. We faced the darkest moments and came out stronger. That is something no one can take from us." The phone rang, and I recognized the number of Mrs. Henderson. She had been keeping in touch, offering guidance, and providing support as we navigated the aftermath. "Maggie, I just wanted to say how proud I am of you," she said warmly. "You have shown extraordinary courage, and your family is lucky to have you. Keep standing strong." "Thank you," I said, my voice full of gratitude. "Your support has meant more than words can express. We couldn't have done this without people like you reminding us that we are not alone." Later that afternoon, I received a surprise visit from my granddaughter, Lily. She ran into my arms, her laughter filling the house. "Grandma, I missed you so much," she exclaimed. "I wanted to come and see you." She exclaimed. "I wanted to come and see you." I held her close, feeling a profound sense of love and connection. "I missed you too, sweetheart. It feels so good to have you here. We have a lot of catching up to do." We spent the afternoon baking cookies together, sharing stories, and laughing. For the first time in a long time, the house was filled with joy, warmth, and the simple pleasures of family life. I realized that the greatest victory of all was not legal restitution or confronting Claire, it was reclaiming our lives, our home, and our hearts. As evening fell, Daniel and I sat on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The sky was painted with shades of orange, pink, and gold. A breathtaking reminder of the beauty in the world despite the darkness we had endured. "We made it, Mom," Daniel said softly. "We faced the lies, the betrayal, and the fear, and we came out the other side." "Yes," I said, my hand resting on his. "We made it because we stood together, because we chose truth, courage, and love. That is what family is, Daniel. That is what will carry us forward." I reflected on the journey, the confrontation with Claire, the legal battles, the emotional turmoil, and the eventual restoration of trust. I realized that the experience had taught me invaluable lessons about resilience, the importance of setting boundaries, and the power of facing challenges head-on. The phone rang again, and I saw Emily's name on the screen. She called to share that she had spoken with several extended family members, and that they were all willing to support our efforts to rebuild. The sense of community and solidarity was overwhelming. We spent the next few days organizing family gatherings, reaching out to those who had been affected by Claire's actions, and rebuilding the bonds that had been strained. Each conversation, each gesture of support, reinforced the idea that family is not just about survival, it is about thriving together, with honesty, empathy, and love. One afternoon, I received a letter from one of the victims of Claire's manipulation. She thanked me for my courage, for standing up, and for ensuring that justice was served. Her words brought tears to my eyes. I realized that our actions had not only restored our family, but had also inspired others to confront their own challenges and fight for justice. As the weeks passed, the house became a place of laughter, warmth, and connection once more. The fear and tension that had dominated our lives were replaced by trust, love, and a shared commitment to family. Daniel and I continued our therapy sessions, working through lingering emotions and reinforcing the bonds that had been tested. The experience had left its mark, but it had also created an opportunity for growth, understanding, and renewal. We had faced deception, manipulation, and betrayal, yet we had emerged stronger, wiser, and more united than ever before. On a bright spring morning, I stood on the porch, looking out at the garden that had been neglected during the chaos. I saw Lily playing with neighbors' children, her laughter echoing through the yard. Daniel was tending to the flowers, a peaceful smile on his face. Emily was helping organize a community event to raise awareness about family fraud and manipulation. I felt a profound sense of peace, knowing that we had faced the darkest moments and had reclaimed our lives. The journey had been painful, challenging, and exhausting, but it had also been transformative. I turned to Daniel, feeling a deep sense of pride and love. "We did it, Daniel. We faced everything and came out stronger. That is what family is. That is what we will continue to build." He nodded, his eyes shining with emotion. "Yes, Mom, and we will never forget the lessons we've learned. We will protect each other, stand for the truth, and continue to grow together." As the sun set, casting a warm glow over our home, I realized that the story was not just about betrayal and deception. It was about resilience, courage, and the power of family to endure and thrive. The reckoning had ended, and a new chapter had begun. I smiled, feeling a sense of completion and hope. The house was filled with life, love, and laughter once more. The past had shaped us, but it did not define us. We had reclaimed our family, our trust, and our future. And in that moment, I knew that we were finally free.